Alex, 4 big games now before the break. How difficult has it been to lift the players after 3 successive defeats?
I've not found it that difficult, if I'm honest. I think players are not silly. I mean, they understand when their performances have arguably merited more than they've got in terms of points. However, we do recognise that points are obviously the most important thing. So we know we're going to have to get a good uplift in form and try and put some points together before we hit the break. And I think it's more about tweaking our performances rather than sort of massive shifts or massive changes in what we're trying to do. I think we just need to improve on certain elements, and if we can do that, I'm pretty confident that the points will start to come.
Wigan have lost their last 2 home games. I think they've lost the last 4 games. Does a match like that put more pressure on you to get a point because they haven't done so well as us not doing as well? And knowing that they're no mugs because they beat Blackburn at home, how do you see this game going?
I think it'll be a tough match like every match in the Championship. I don't think it applies more pressure to us because I think we're under pressure in every game. Do you know what I mean? And we should be under pressure in every game because I think the pressure that we apply to ourselves is more than any pressure that's going to be external. Do you know what I mean? Because we expect ourselves to turn up, we expect to perform, we expect to try and win. Do you know what I mean? That's a given in any game that we play, irrespective of who we're playing. We've played, I think, pretty much most of the top teams since I've been here. And probably apart from Burnley, we were set up slightly differently. Every other game we've went and attacked the game and we've tried to win the points, so I don't see this one being any different.
You said yourself post-match and after a couple of matches that Stoke aren't hurting teams as much as they might do. Up to the box, from box to box we're fine, and then you get into the box and, for example, the last couple of matches, the quality of the corners, the free kicks, the chances haven't been as good. How can you change that? Do you just have to keep working at it and hope it changes?
Yeah, I think it's making sure that our quality is good enough, when we get into good areas. But if you look at the chances on Saturday, Tariq Fosu puts a great cross in for Jacob at the back post. We just need to probably get caught under the ball, goes in too early. We have one from Nick at the back post as well. We have another great chance where Will puts a ball with outside his foot into Jacob's path and he takes a touch when he could probably arguably hit it first time. Tariq Fosu probably could and should have had a penalty in the game, but the ball goes through Hanley's legs. So it's not as if we're certainly not short on opportunities. I mean, you look at the Rotherham game, which is one of the last 3 games, the amount of opportunities and chances we had in that. We're not short on opportunities. I think obviously I check the stats on all the time because what I want to make sure is what I see with my eyes is reflected in what the data looks like. So in the last 11 games since I've been here, we're 5th in the league for XG in terms of what our expected goals look like, which means in the last 11 games we've attacked and it should score more goals than 19 other teams in the league. That in my view is pretty good. So we're not doing huge amounts wrong. The problem we've got is we're not clinical enough when we get the opportunities that have came our way, and we need to be more clinical. So yeah, that's pretty much where we're.
You, I won't say told me off, chided me when I said the problem with Stoke fans is that they get into a good position, win a couple of games and then can't carry it on.
Yeah.
Because of that, and it's happened again, because of that, do you think that you might have to tweak the tactics, change the personnel?
To a point. Like I said earlier, it is tweaks more than wholesale shifts, if you like. So yeah, I think I said that actually, didn't I, earlier on when I said it's more of a tweak that we need to do. So yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that. I think, but there's tweaks we make for every game. That's the only thing I will say. So how we've played against the last 3 opponents, how we played against Sheffield United, how we played against Preston, had tweaks within that system or within that shape, whether it be through personnel or whether it be through areas that we need to exploit or areas we need to pay particular attention to in terms of making sure we stop, because that's what their strength is. So that doesn't really change from our point of view. I think naturally, because you haven't won in the last few games, there'll be a few players sitting at the side thinking, right, I think I maybe deserve a chance to play now, and that thought process for them may well be merited. So that's something that I need to look at and then decide what I think the best team is to go and try and get the points in the game. So yeah, I think what I don't do is I don't rule anything out. Do you know what I mean? I look at all angles, I look at all like sort of personnel issues in terms of how do I think we can improve. Does somebody else deserve an opportunity now? Has somebody done a lot of work and we maybe need to drop them out and give them a bit of a breather? Yeah, that's something I consider every day and certainly every game.
You've had a good look at the squad. You know the faults and the things that you have to fix. Do you feel that this squad is learning and adapting to what you want to do? Because your systems are very flexible throughout the games. You change in game. Do you find the players are coping with that better now?
I think they've dealt with it extremely well. You know, I think what's happened is I think the last few results have sort of masked how well the players have done, in my opinion. I think if we got, which I deemed that we deserved within the game, based on me having watched the games back maybe 2 or 3 times, done the debrief, looked at all the data, looked at the stats, looked at everything that I can possibly look at, I think we haven't got our just rewards in the last 3 matches. But I'm not silly, I'm not naive, I know football, nobody really cares, they expect you to win, so that's fine. What I've got to do is just make sure that the tweaks and the little bits that we can do, we try and do as well as we can. But I think the players have adapted extremely well, and I've been extremely pleased with their effort levels. I still think there's a bit of work to do in terms of when we come up against a bit of resistance, when we can see the goal. I still think we can be better in that respect in terms of how we react to that. But I think you touched on it earlier, Ange, when you were talking about the fans' reaction in terms of you're doing well, they're waiting on it not going well. And that comes off the back of, for the last 5-6 seasons since this club's been relegated for the Premier League, we've never put more than 3 wins consistently together in 6 seasons, which is rubbish, innit? Do you know what I mean? And to be fair, we came really close to doing that, I think, within 9 games. So I think we've shown progress, in my opinion, but ultimately points make prizes, do you know what I mean? So we need to make sure we get more points on the board.
Being away at Wigan, and there'll be another great following from Stoke, does that ease the pressure a little bit? Because as you've mentioned, you'll see the game completely different to fans, people in the media. You'll see all the stats, you'll know how well you feel the players have played.
Yep.
But basically the fans will look at the game against Wigan tomorrow and they'll say, we're on the same points, we're just above them, this is a must-win game. How do you take that pressure away from the players? Because they're not stupid, as you say, they'll know how important this game may be.
Because they're all must-win games. For different reasons. Do you know what I mean? Because if you're mid-table, they're a must-win game because you need to get into the top half. If you're in the playoffs, they're a must-win game because you need to stay there. If you're in the bottom half, they're a must-win game because you need to pull away for the bottom. If you're down at the bottom of the bottom, you need to must-win because you need to get further up the table. So as far as we look at any game that's coming up for different reasons, they're all must-win games. And I think when you've been a player, when you've been a coach, when you've been a manager, for as long as I've done it now, I understand the importance of every game. Do you know what I mean? There's not any game that we'll take lightly. There's not any game we'll go in and be complacent in any way, shape or form. We need to be on it, we need to be ready, and if we're not, then yeah, that's I need to fix that.
As a player, when you were a player, you presumably went on a few bad runs yourself. The mentality that you have might not be the mentality that the other players have, but you can use those instances and those experiences to help the players. Do you find that really helpful because you can turn around and say, listen, I've been there?
Yeah, I think what you want to do, see as a coach, you want to look at your team on the pitch and your team should represent your sort of personality, shall we say, in terms of resilience, grittiness, do you know what I mean, being able to dig in the moments. And when you get your team to that point, that's a really satisfying feeling as a coach. Do you know what I mean? Because your team's an extension of how you believe the game should be played and how your team should behave. We've still got a bit of work to get there. I think there's certainly signs of that. But it's 11 games. Do you know what I mean? That's what we've done so far. And I think we've come a long, long way in certain aspects of our game. It's naturally going to take a little bit of time to get the whole way where we want to get to. You know, because it was 11 games, then I mean, you'd only need to change coach once every, 20 games or whatever at that point. So, but yeah, listen, I think for us, we've got a lot of work to do, as you always have. And see, the thing is with football, you're never satisfied. If you win 2-1, it should have been 2-0 and you shouldn't have conceded. If you win 2-0, it should have been 3-0 because you should have took the other chance. You're never satisfied with what you get, whether you're the coach, whether you're a fan. There's always the bit extra. If you win 4 games, we want to win 5. It's that simple, and my job's to push us to our extremities in terms of what we're capable of doing.
Hopefully we'll win the next 4. But
I agree.
People are already talking about the transfer window. People are already assuming what players you're going to go for.
People being who?
the media, you see everything written in the media.
I don't see anything in the media.
Right, okay. Well, all I'm going to ask you about it, because I know you wouldn't answer anything, and neither should you, is if you need to purchase any players, have the club told you that there is the backing given FFP to do so?
We haven't had those discussions of yet, and it wouldn't be something I would tell you anyway.
No. And as you're not going to tell me about injury news, unfortunately, Dave Rouse has now left the club for what appear to be personal reasons. I'm sure you'd like to thank him for his work, but have you got plans to replace him?
Yeah, we brought young Rich up for the academy, so he's worked with the goalkeepers, I think, extensively over the last couple of years, along with Rousey when he's been in situ. There's been times where Rousey's potentially missed things through COVID, through maybe personal issues, and Rich has filled in. Good coach, you know, he's worked with the younger age groups as well. So he'll come in and he'll see us through till obviously the break, and then we'll take a view on it from there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Alex, would it be fair to say that both yourself and Wigan are inconsistent in terms of the results you've had, in terms of not against each other, but with certain opposition? Would that be fair to say? Two inconsistent teams?
Yeah, but I think you can see that. You just need to look at the sort of results, don't you? Do you know what I mean? So I think that's easy to say. I think if we'd won the last two games, your question would be very different. So, but I think if we're being honest, we've been inconsistent for 6 seasons as a club. So consistency is something that we need to try and we need to bring a stable performance level. I think the performance level's certainly been a hell of a lot more stable than the results. Our next step is we need to make those results stable in terms of the fact that if we don't win, you don't lose. Do you know what I mean? That's what we've got to do. We've got to make sure that we're really hard to beat. We don't lose if we don't win, but ultimately we go and try and win the match. So yeah, if you're talking about us and Wigan being inconsistent throughout the season so far, I think that's quite clear for everybody to see, yeah.
As you look ahead, of course, and you take into this game, we've seen signs where certain areas of the pitch look as if they're developing, and then the next week we see completely opposite. Does that frustrate you, where you think, oh yeah, I've got it defensively right, or maybe the midfield? Is that a problem in terms of frustrating, where you feel that you are getting the application into the players what you want?
Yeah, but I don't agree with the fact that one week it looks good, the next week it doesn't. I don't agree with that. What I would suggest, in my opinion, is that in the bulk of the game it's looked as it should, which is vast improvements, but then we've made some really bad decisions individually, and that's ultimately cost us maybe a chance or maybe an opportunity to score, or we've made a bad cross, or we've took a bad touch, or certainly defensively we've been beaten in a 1v1 situation that we really shouldn't get beaten, or we've made a bad decision and we've jumped out when we shouldn't have jumped out and left space that shouldn't have been there. So I would more put it down to individual bad errors rather than a collective going from being very good to not being very good. I don't agree with that. I think in the main we've looked relatively sort of solid in large spells of games, but we've shown lapses of concentration, we've shown bad judgment at times, and unfortunately for us they've cost us goals that have cost us points.
But you go into this game with possibly the foundation that you want, and the fact you really want to win every game. You keep telling us that, and that's got to be the fact. You've got to go in with that mentality, Alex, haven't you?
Yeah, that doesn't scare me, yeah. I don't fear losing a game to not go and try and win a game, if that makes any sense. So I think you can go into any game, right, and you can try and win the game, or you can go in there and hope not to lose and try and be conservative and hope you try and nick something. I won't approach the game like that. I'll go to Wigan and we'll try and win the match. And I don't think you can have any fearfulness about the fact that we might lose. Of course you might lose, but you might lose playing the other way. That's even worse. Because what happens is you go there and you don't have a desire to win and you lose. What happens is I think your performance suffers. I think then the confidence and belief within the group in terms of trying to be aggressive, trying to be the front foot team, trying to be the team in ascendancy. If you don't have that, I think longer term that's more damaging to the team, in my opinion. So we'll set out to try and win the match. I think that's the question you're asking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the important factor, isn't it, really, that you put that into your players' minds. I mean, you're not going to, I suppose, really push them about what Wigan can do, because you'll know what they can do, but it's all about what you do, Alex, isn't it?
It's both for us. So we'll go into every game understanding exactly what the opposition's strengths and weaknesses are. We know exactly how they score the majority of their goals, where they try and get the ball, where they utilise arguably their best players and how they'll try and hurt us. we'll try and nullify that as best we can through either numbers or personnel or whatever, and then we'll understand where we think they're weak, and we'll try and get our most attacking, most sort of, I don't know, whether it be a technical player or whether it be a quick player, into the areas that we think we can exploit. So each game, our game plan's very, very different. And what's happening now, and I think I referred to this when I first came in, is you end up with a sort of reference point for games. So what I'll say to the lads is, right, remember the way we pressed against Birmingham? This is how we pressed against these this week. And they go, right, okay. So they've got the ball kit in their head. All I need to do is then put the final pieces to it. Do you know what I mean? Because there is slightly differences in terms of how we'll build in comparison to how we'll press. So, yeah, but that's normal.
Thank you.
Cheers.
I think I'm right in saying that you said before about the fact that you're pleased with the standard of the squad that you've got in fitness and commitment, and so choosing them, an 11 to start from, and it has been relatively easy taking out of fact of injuries and things like this. But a couple of players who haven't sort of like had so much of a crack of a whip is people like Wright Phillips, for example, who hasn't started all season. And Connor Taylor, who hasn't even been in contention for the last few games. Are they not being so considered? Are they not in that sort of group of players that I've just said?
Yeah, of course they are. Well, Demario was on the bench at the weekend and come on against Norwich.
But there's not a start in him, though. Hasn't started all season.
Well, my argument would be that Tariq Fosu, who's played in the same position as where Demario come on, who's been a very good performer for us in the last few games. I think you look at him against Norwich, you put two crosses in the lads' heads in the middle of the box, and has performed relatively well. In fact, better than that actually, that's unfair. He's performed well in the games, which then means that the manager needs to wait his time and bide. Bear in mind, the two lads that you're speaking about are younger lads. Do you know what I mean? They're also younger players, they're learning trade. And naturally for them sometimes you need to bide your time to get your opportunity.
So that particularly applies to, say, someone like Connor Taylor?
Well, I think that Connor's come in earlier in the season and played well in certain games. I think we've got Ben Wilmot, who for me, for large parts of games, shows how much qualities Ben's got, because he's quick, he's good in the ball, he's good in the air for his size, he's dynamic. And yeah, I think that his performances, albeit he's probably had a couple of laps in concentration at times, but I think he's performed well. Connor Taylor's also been carrying like a sort of pubic symphysis injury, hence the reason why he's not. I think his first training session really was today in the last 2 weeks, so that's also been sort of lingering on in the background.
And finally, I just want to take you up on something you said earlier. You said you've looked at the stats and you don't feel that the side are doing much wrong, and I certainly agree with it. But then you feel to take it just to that next level, to make us a winning side, Stoke a winning side, that's been something that this club has not been able to do, as you so rightly say, in the last sort of 5-6 years.
Yeah.
Surely it doesn't look like much, but it's a mountain to climb. It's quite a lot to be able to achieve that.
Of course it is. If it was easy, everybody would do it.
Yeah, that's my argument.
Do you know what I mean? So it's not an easy job. Do you know what I mean? And not only that, you do the job under scrutiny, you do the job under expectation, you do the job under pressure, and not only pressure of the fans and the expectation of the expectation of the players that they want to play, the players that are not playing. Do you know what I mean? There's hundreds of different things that you need to take into account. So there's so many different dynamics that you need to contend with. But I believe, having done this for a long time and done it at a number of clubs, that we're moving in the right direction. And like you say, we need to, quite simply at the moment, if we're better in both boxes, which I know sounds really simplistic, but sometimes it is really simplistic, head the ball and don't let him head the ball. I mean, if you're defending your box, you get across the front of somebody, you get the ball at your box, the likelihood is you've just stopped a chance. If you're in the opposition's box, make sure you beat the first man with the cross. Make sure you take a nice secure touch so you can get your strike away. Do you know what I mean? And I know it might sound really simplistic, but sometimes football really is simple. Do you know what I mean? If you get the better of your man and you get across the front of somebody, or the quality of cross is a good one, it gives our lads in the middle of the box a better opportunity to score the goal. And if we can improve the two aspects at the moment, the bulk of the work, in my opinion, for there to there, in terms of our general play and our general setup to stop teams, has improved markedly. And if we can improve the two aspects, we'll be moving in the right direction. And as you say, we'll then start to get a winning team.
And consistency, as you so rightly say, is the other thing, you know. And you even
That
warned...
comes secondary though, doesn't it?
It does,
You
yeah.
need to win
But
first to get consistency.
you had those 2 wins, and then you almost
Yeah.
predicted, you know, the Rotherham, you know, you might have a problem with Rotherham, but you also talked about must-win games. Every game's a must-win game, and you had the performance against Sheffield United, which was sublime. And then a couple of weeks later, you had the performance at home again against Coventry, and fans were sort of saying, how could you get such a completely different? Surely, as you would say, they're both must-win games.
Yeah, but I disagree with that though. I don't think the performance was markedly different. What I will say is I thought against Sheffield United we were much more potent and looked much more likely to score. I thought our creativity on the day against Coventry wasn't great. I thought Coventry, the difference against Coventry, but is Coventry sat in a block of 5. Do you know what I mean? Sheffield United played a back 4. So it was completely different shapes that you played against. And I can guarantee you, playing against the back 4 to break down is easier than playing against the back 5. So, yeah, both of the games were different in that respect. But our control within the game in both was equally as good, if not probably even better against Coventry. Because until they scored their goal, I can't even remember them getting up the pitch, if I'm honest. Whereas against Sheffield United had moments within the game because they've got good players. But goals change games. You score goals, what happens is people will walk away from it. And not only that, that's what I say to the players on a regular basis. What you do in the last 15-20 minutes of games has a massive bearing on things. Because nobody ever remembers the first 20 minutes. They only ever remember the last. Because it's the last bit you leave them with. And disappointingly for us, recently, the last few games, our ending to games has been the poorest part of our games. And that's the last bit we've left people with. And we need to fix that, because if we leave them with the positive side, we'll all feel a bit better about ourselves, I think.